Collections here at the Filson. Welcome to another edition of Collection Reflection. I am standing here next to our portrait of Governor Isaac Shelby, General Isaac Shelby, one of Kentucky's early, very prominent citizens, and I'll say heroes. He was a native of Maryland, born in 1750, raised in Virginia, lived both in Virginia and North Carolina. He fought in Lord Dunmore's War in 1774 against the Shawnee. He was at the Battle of Point Pleasant. During the Revolution, he was an officer, rose to the rank of colonel, and was one of the heroes in the 1780 Battle of Kings Mountain in South Carolina, right there along the South Carolina-North Carolina border, which was a major victory in the Southern Campaign for the Continental and militia forces. After the war, he came to Kentucky and became a very prominent leader in Kentucky's early history and its move towards statehood. And when Kentucky became a state in June of 1792, he became the first governor. During that time, he, of course, is dealing with a number of things, which includes not only the Spanish conspiracy, which many of you have probably heard about, but also the continuing Indian wars, both north of the Ohio, but to the south in the Cumberland River region. And this letter, written to the Secretary of War, Henry Knox, in 1794, focuses on some of those problems, talking about Kentucky's politics and their economy, what's going on, and specifically about Indian raids, mostly from the Creeks and the Cherokees coming up out of Tennessee, that Cumberland River area. And so this is just a wonderful example of his letter writing, and there you can see his very nice, prominent, big scrawl of a signature. He lived, his home was in Lincoln County, named Traveler's Rest. And so he, after his first term as governor, he retired to his farm, but then the War of 1812 comes along. And he comes out of retirement, he is elected governor of Kentucky again, and so he's the first and the fifth governor of the Commonwealth, and raises an army of militia, other Kentuckians that had already been fighting to the north in the Lakes area, Indiana, Ohio, the Detroit area. But he raises an army and goes to the aid, the reinforcement of General William Henry Harrison's army. And his Kentuckians, along with Harrison's troops, have the Battle of the Thames in October of 1813, which is a major American victory. And that really, in many ways, kind of ends that threat and that theater of the war around the lakes. That's the battle in which the famous Shawnee leader Tecumseh is killed. So he then comes back and retires back to his farm. Of course, if you're going to be raising militia, you couldn't get on the phone or the email or anything back then. And so what did you do? You printed circular letters like this, and you had them distributed. And so this one, and he signed them, so this is going out, as you can see, in 1813, July of 1813, and it's going to Norburn Beale, who lived here in Louisville. And so this is one of those wonderful items. We're going to be revisiting the Beale Booth family papers again in the future. It's one of my favorite collections, and it's incredibly rich in the history that it contains. So this comes out of the Beale Booth family papers and is a nice example of a War of 1812 item, which we have a very good collection of, and another Isaac Shelby item. Now, in looking at the portrait here, this is by Matthew Harris Jouett. He, of course, was one of Kentucky's great portrait painters, our most famous early artists. Shelby, who, as I mentioned, born in 1750, died in 1826. 1826 wasn't a particularly good year for American patriots. We have John Adams dying, Thomas Jefferson dying, Richard Clough Anderson of Soldiers Retreat here in Louisville dying, and Isaac Shelby dying. So it's kind of a bad year for patriots. But before he died, maybe, perhaps, as early as 1816, Matthew Jouett paints this beautiful portrait of the old general and the governor. He is born, of course, in Kentucky. He's a native Kentuckian, born in the late 1780s. He serves in the War of 1812. He goes off and studies under Gilbert Stuart in Boston in 1816, comes back, opens up a studio in Lexington. He has a farm in Fayette County outside Lexington, and for the next 10 years essentially paints, going back and forth from Kentucky down to the deep south to New Orleans and Natchez, where he winters and gets commissions down there for his work, and then comes back up. Tragically, all too soon, like so many of this period, with illnesses going around, in 1827 he contracted a fever. Historians think it probably was typhoid fever, and he dies in August of 1827. Much too young, he's not even 40 yet. So we lost one of our foremost early painters. Fortunately, he was a pretty good record keeper, and he left an extensive list of the portraits he had painted. And historians and collectors and even owners, some of these portraits are still in the family today. We got this from a Shelby descendant some years ago. Have allowed historians and others to track those portraits and try to ascribe and best attribute or know if a portrait, because for a while every portrait seemed to be a Jouett, but we know that wasn't true. So his list has really helped identify that, and there's no doubt about Jouett being the artist of this very fine portrait of Governor and General Isaac Shelby. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Collection Reflection, and we hope you'll join us again.